Does screen size matter in racing sims, and if so, why? I thought I should put things to the test by taking things to the extreme and swapping out my regular sim screen setup with a tiny screen and a giant projector. Here are the setups. On the left, a 7-inch camera monitor, placed close enough to my eye line that I could replicate the field of view that I'd normally have with my 32-inch monitor. And on the right, a 75-inch projector screen, placed as close as possible to achieve the same field of view. I think the best way to test all of this is to just jump in and do a race against the AI and ACC and see how it all works out. But the first problem I've noticed is I can't actually focus all that well on the screen this close. I'm going to need to lose the glasses. So, a few seconds in, I already sort of feel like I'm immersed in the game in the same way I would be on my normal screen setup. I kind of expected that. It's still a little bit surprising. Already starting to forget about the fact that this is a bizarre setup. There are a few things that are tripping me up. The rather wide bezels on the edge of this screen are not something I'm used to being able to see in my peripheral vision. Let's send it. Because why not? One thing I would note is that head position seems to be incredibly critical and quite delicate. Obviously, because the head is so close to the screen, tiny movements left and right, and particularly front and back, would change your viewing position quite dramatically. And obviously those forward and backward movements have a big impact on your sort of perceived field of view. Field of view? Field of view. But I have to be honest, driving this feels pretty natural. The car goes where I expect it to go. I'm not entirely sure the outcome I was hoping for with this experiment, but I'd say it's a success. This is totally workable. Though, perhaps I wouldn't recommend it. To give some context in terms of drivability, I think it was exactly the same as the normal monitor setup. In terms of comfort, clearly this isn't the right way to go. The screen is very close, it's very bright in your eyes. Your viewing distance to it is incredibly critical, and as you move forwards and backwards, your field of view changes. As you move left and right, your sort of perception of where the centre line of the car is changes. I guess you could argue that 7 inches is a little bit on the small side, but it totally works, and I'm really genuinely intrigued to see what's going to happen when I put up the big screen in a moment. Now, it was pretty apparent right from the off that this is a more comfortable setup than having a tiny screen a ridiculously close distance to your face. But the thing that surprises me here is that, if anything, I feel a little bit more disconnected from the game world than I did. But perhaps I shouldn't be surprised, because I've used sim setups before with giant screens that have been placed quite a long way away, frankly, that had the same impact, where you sort of feel like you're still in a space and you're not in the game itself. In terms of driving, it honestly doesn't feel any different to my normal setup or when I was using the little 7-inch screen. And that probably isn't surprising either, because, well, I've corrected the field of view to make sense for this screen size and how far away from it I am. Now, with the 7-inch screen, I was able to use the same field of view as I had with my normal setup, just by moving it a bit closer, but space constraints meant that I couldn't quite get the same setup with the projector screen. I just ran out of room against the back wall. So it is a couple of degrees different, but it is mathematically correct. So it's probably not that surprising that this setup is more comfortable and practical than the tiny screen. But the interesting point for me was that the driving feel felt the same in all three setups. I was able to position the car naturally and without having to really overthink it on any of the three different screen sizes. But the other interesting point for me was that this setup felt less immersive than my regular screen or the stupid setup that I tried earlier in the video. Now, I suspect that has something to do with the fact that I can see more things around me in my sim racing room than I'd normally be able to. But as I mentioned earlier, I have actually experienced this before in various public sim setups that have used very large screens positioned quite a long way away just for ease of access and that kind of thing. Now, with the setup I have here, I can't actually get the screen any closer to the rig. Maybe if I had a custom setup where I could hang it behind the wheel deck, it would be better, but I think perhaps I'm experiencing the law of diminishing returns with a screen of this size. So, to answer the question, how much does screen size matter? I think the answer, at least for me, has to be not as much as I previously thought. And ultimately, the right screen for you is going to depend on a number of factors, most probably notably the space that you have available. But I think the main takeaway here is that, at least from a performance perspective, the size of the screen probably has less impact than things like the refresh rate and the quality of the screen itself. Oh, and of course, choosing the correct field of view. And if you need to know any more on that subject, I have covered it extensively.